Good morning, and welcome to Citizens Bulletin, brought to you by Americans for Prosperity. Our host is Ashley Klingensmith, State Director of Americans for Prosperity. Ashley, good morning.
Good morning, listeners. Thank you so much for having us this week, and we are excited to be here.
For those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with the work of AFP, would you mind taking a moment explaining what it is AFP does and your role at Americans for Prosperity?
Absolutely. So what I am so excited to share is that just yesterday on Sunday, we celebrated our chapter's 10-year anniversary. And so we are thrilled to say we have been operating consistently in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for over a decade. I can say that today now. And we have been the consistent force behind a fight for a more constrained and limited Harrisburg and DC. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and so our power and influence is derived from the mobilization of grassroots activists across all 67 counties. And so without your partnership, whether that be digital in nature, so interacting with the posts that we are so intentional about sharing up on Facebook and on our Twitter channels. You can find us on Facebook by searching at AFPPA and Twitter by searching at AFP Pennsylvania. Those are our two respective pages, and we would really value you liking the Facebook page, following our Twitter account. But whether it be just interacting in that space or whether it is getting together with one of our engagement directors across the state, whether that's in Erie or in the South Hills of Pittsburgh or in the center of the state in Wormleysburg, right across the river from Harrisburg, or whether that's up in the Scranton corridor or in the Southeast region. We want to be able to plug you, your friends, and your family all across the Commonwealth in with what we're doing and engage you in whatever way really is most comfortable. And for some people, that's coming into offices. For some people, that's digital in nature. But whatever way you're willing to invest in scaling your voice, we are here to help and assist in that pursuit. So, I'm the state director. I've been with our chapter just shy of 6 years, and I've served in several different capacities, but started out in the field as the lone field director in the state. So it was a lot of traversing I-80 and 76 and 70 and all across the state, and still doing that six years later. And so having a blast, meeting new people every day. But I'm lucky to work alongside a team of 5 that are really just forces to be reckoned with in the public policy space.
We admire what you've done. You're a hardworking woman, and you do an excellent job. I know you have a couple of topics you wanted to discuss, so let's get right into it. What's the first topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to let everyone know about is the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. It began, its inaugural meeting was in 1989, which is wild. So we are here at quite a few decades of conference, and it's 2 days. It's always on a Friday and Saturday. And so this year, it is being held on March 27th and March 28th at the Radisson in Camp Hill. And so it's actually called the Radisson Harrisburg, but it is right near the Capitol. And so if you can get to Harrisburg, you can get to the Radisson. But we are, for the past few years, we have been one of the main sponsors, and it is an exceptional way and kind of the premier annual meeting to connect with other liberty-minded activists and advocates and just concerned Pennsylvanians. And so I think, what is really neat about PLC is that there really are people from every kind of ideological and political background. And so some maybe are more libertarian oriented, some maybe are more socially conservative oriented, but everyone values, paring down Harrisburg and DC's influence over our lives. And so that is an area where, everyone can find consensus when it comes to PLC. And so what is great is registration is open. And so what I want people to do is head to paleadershipconference.org. And there you can link directly with the registration form and submit for your payment right there online. But we are really excited at the lineup. The very first speaker that we announced was Jason Chaffetz, former congressman from Utah, now a Fox News contributor and fellow at the Kennedy School Institute of Politics at Harvard as well. And so he is going to be the featured dinner speaker Friday night on March 27th. And, again, this is the largest and longest running of the state-based conservative conferences that exists. And so we are excited that elected officials, scholars, journalists, and activists are going to be delivering really great panel conversations, really engaging breakout training sessions, and also just providing a plethora of resources along the way as exhibitors. And so we are always, right when you walk in to the conference center, we're the first table on the right. And so the theme of our booth and exhibit this year is comprehensive tax reform. And so we're going to really spend some time talking with folks about why we need it, what we can do to make it happen, and the benefits of what we've seen at the federal level and how now is the time to capitalize on those and amplify those through really robust reform when it comes to Pennsylvania's tax code. But I just wanted everyone to kind of get this on their radar, get registered. Some of the other speakers include Brent Bozell, John Gizzi, Paul Kangor, Rick Santorum is the breakfast speaker, Congressman Scott Perry, who has one of the most, I think, highly publicized congressional races of them all this year. So there's going to be a lot of people to listen to and learn from, and we just really would love to meet you and have you there and provide you with some resources that are going to be helpful all year throughout this year in creating conversations with neighbors and with friends about the importance of policy and the impact that policy has made. And so head to paleadershipconference.org. You can register there, check out the agenda and the speakers. But the panel that I will be moderating will be on tax reform. And we are so excited to have Jonathan Williams joining us from ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, who is one of their chief economic advisors. We are going to have a local business owner who will be talking about what tax reform in Pennsylvania would mean for him. And then we are going to have the majority whip of the state house, Carrie Benninghoff, on the panel, who is the prime sponsor of this big, bold reform that is currently sitting in Appropriations Committee. And we're going to just talk to him about what inspired him to do it and get from him what he believes would be helpful from all of the activists that are going to be present. So that will be the panel I am moderating. And then on Saturday as well, we are going to have a really great training offered by our Grassroots Leadership Academy that is called Becoming a Watchdog. And we are going to really do like an hour-long deep dive with a period of Q&A afterward on the best tactics and most strategic, way that you can become a watchdog, whether that is on the local municipal level, on the state level, and at the federal level when it comes to your members of Congress. So I think it's exciting, and we can't wait to see you there. We all put a lot of thought and energy. Loman Henry leading the way of the Lincoln Institute and into the programming, and we couldn't be more excited for this year. So yeah, I thought maybe if I could, I would just dig a little bit into why we need tax reform. I know we talked about this a little bit.
Yes, we have.
The second half of 2019, but I think it warrants a second look and a second conversation in light of some new news and articles that Pennsylvania has been in. We talked last year about North American Moving Services annual U.S. migration report. And so, unfortunately, in 2018, for the first time, Pennsylvania was in the top 5 outbound migration states. And so early this year, they published the 2019 migration report, about a month ago. And once again, we are in the top 5 outbound migration states. So we did not do any better. And so essentially some of the key takeaways were that there is a clear pattern of Northeast high tax states making an exodus to the South and the southern half below the good old Mason-Dixon line. And so for inbound moves, the top states were South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, and then Arizona was in there too. And I think some of that it can be attributed, a lot of people like to say to the weather, right? That people are escaping to warmer climates. But the number one data point that suggested Americans were moving from the Northeast and relocating to the states I just mentioned were because of their tax friendliness ratings. And so Kiplinger, the great online finance advice and business forecasting magazine, did place Pennsylvania in the 10 least tax-friendly states in the country. And so we ranked 6th in this report. We ranked 7th as the Keystone State. And so a couple of the things that they noted were that our average state and local sales tax was 6.34%. The average property tax for a $100,000 home value was about $1,600 annually. And they noted our gas tax and fee being at 58.7 cents a gallon. And so property taxes are above average, and we have the second highest gas tax in the nation. We have an inheritance tax, which adds to our overall tax burden. And so for all of those reasons, even though we have that 3.07 flat income tax rate, which at first glance would lead folks to believe we could be a low tax state, when you look deeper, you see that there are so many cities and towns that tack on local income taxes. And then, of course, we have school districts doing the same. And something that I pulled that I think your listeners will be especially interested to hear is that Philadelphia hits folks the hardest with a 3.87% tax on residents and a 3.44% tax on non-residents. And so I think all of these additional taxes and fees lead us to that 7th place worst ranking. And you never want to be among the firsts of the worsts in any given index. And so we really believe that there is an opportunity to make meaningful, comprehensive tax reforms that are going to address some of these issues that are in the current tax code that are keeping Commonwealth families and businesses from realizing their full potential. And so we really want to drive the principles that we want to see adhered to in a comprehensive tax reform bill. And so we want it to be competitive. We have got to lower our corporate net income tax rate. We have the 3rd highest in the country at 9.99%. And it just simply makes us less competitive with other states and internationally. So we want to see that rate lowered so businesses can compete and businesses can look at Pennsylvania as a real viable prospect for incorporation. We want it to be simple. We want, we have that low rate of 3.07% income tax rate, but there are so many complexities in our code that should be addressed and simplified. We have a lot of confusing and outdated income classifications, and we want lawmakers to consider options for simplifying all of the taxing authorities that we see when we look at our pay stubs, right? We see so many different line items that are various taxing authorities that make doing business here and simply trying to file our taxes really nightmarish. And so we want them to just adopt a more simplified number of authorities and also adopt some clearer assessment cycles when it comes to real property taxes, so there is not such a high degree of uncertainty. And that is what you see when it comes to conversations about reassessments. And third, we want to see the tax code become more fair. We give away hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in corporate welfare every single year in the form of tax subsidies. And all that means is that government is picking who should win and who should lose based on their political connectedness, right, to the people under the dome in Harrisburg. And we want them to review and eliminate those existing tax credits in favor of lowering the overall corporate tax rate, which is going to create a more level playing field for businesses of every size. And so you should not need to be politically connected, to receive a tax benefit. Not everyone has the resources to travel to Harrisburg and lobby. And moreover, that's simply not how the state of play should be, and we shouldn't accept it to be that way. And then there's just two overarching principles that we want lawmakers to focus on when they're developing legislation. They should be thinking that they should offset any base broadening, such as the elimination of corporate tax rates, with corresponding rate reductions. So there should be no net increase in a tax burden on Pennsylvanians after tax reform. So of course, and we would never support legislation that would do that. So that's critically important for them to keep in mind. And then we want them to make sure that a comprehensive tax reform package is not commingled with unrelated issues. And so when that happens in legislation, it opens it up to lawsuits after it's been passed. And so we want this to be a narrowly focused bill that is that just applies to tax policy and independently consider any other policy initiatives separately. But I think this is so timely because just this week, there was an article in the Inquirer, in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the headline is "Millions of Dollars in PA Tax Credits May Not Be Paying Off for Taxpayers." And the first couple of sentences are, "A state tax credit to encourage Pennsylvanians to donate their bone marrow hasn't been used once in the more than 5 years since it was signed into law. Another credit, which encourages tech startups to relocate near universities, lacks follow-up to verify how many jobs are created and what they pay. A third program has awarded millions of dollars to companies to improve broadband internet in rural areas without requiring them to actually invest there." And so in the most recent fiscal year, we gave away more than $500 million in tax credits, but an independent office tasked with reviewing them is now questioning whether some are really paying dividends. And so this is what we have been saying for years, right, at Americans for Prosperity. And it's really quite timely to have this article published, because we know that this has been going on, and now there is, incontrovertible, proof and attention that's being paid. And so, as we've discussed before, our vision for economic opportunity is really to empower people to earn their success. And what is happening is we are empowering and tilting the playing field in favor of a few at the expense of the rest of us that maybe don't have all of the different lever access that some of the bigger folks do. And so when we think about state priorities, when it comes to fiscal policy, we just want tax codes that are fairer, flatter, simpler, more transparent, behavior neutral, with rates low enough to afford the beneficial role of government, but preserving the opportunity for folks to invest in their families, in their communities, and in their businesses. And so we want all of the spending that is done through the collection of tax revenues to be limited to government's beneficial role. And based on the 3 tax credits I just talked to you about, we're just not seeing that happen. And so we want to just create an opportunity and an environment for communities to take on the responsibility in empowering the vulnerable, not Harrisburg, because they can never do it right. And so we're going to just keep on working on tax reform. We're going to keep on working on the Taxpayer Bill of Rights legislation that exists in the House of the Taxpayer Protection Act and in the Senate, and make sure that there are tax expenditure limits, put in place and codified so that we can kind of regain some fiscal sanity under the dome.
Thank you for that very thorough explanation of where Pennsylvania is at. Folks, these stats are based on facts and are not politically motivated and can be looked up. Ashley, what's the website we can direct our listeners to?
Yes, visit AmericansForProsperity.org, and you can go ahead and click Take Action, and we actually have an I Volunteer letter which will be sent to both your state rep and state senator that tells them, hey, we want you to support comprehensive tax reform with these 3 principles in mind: competitive, simple, and fair. And they will receive that in their inbox the second you click send, or the second you click sign. And so that's what we want you all to do. And of course, if you ever just want some of what I've talked about in writing or in the form of a one-pager, simply send an email to info@afphq.org, and we will be able to get you whatever kind of content you need to be able to make a compelling case for what we just talked about, comprehensive tax reform. And without you calling your members or calling upon your members, whether that's via phone or through our letter, and really exerting pressure from the outside in, there is not a whole lot of incentive to do anything this big and bold. It was unbelievable what the administration was able to do with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in just, a year and a half. I remember it took the Reagan administration 7 years to get comprehensive tax reform passed. And so, but we've got to create a sense of urgency, and we cannot do that, as I said earlier, without your partnership. So grateful for you visiting AmericansForProsperity.org. Click on the Action Center, and then you will see the letter there for tax reform.
Thank you for sharing that reminder. Listeners, please take advantage of that. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it does let your legislators know that you are aware and informed and want them to vote the right way. Sadly, we're out of time for this week. Ashley, we look forward to hearing from you next week on Citizens Bulletin. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Stay informed, and God bless.